Welcome back. My name's Tina Hurley with Less Leg, More Heart, the charity that helps people transitioning from able-bodied living to living with a disability by way of peer mentorship, medical advocacy, funding for holistic care, and funding for home services during transition. I have a really exciting topic today because it's very dear to my heart. It's a supplement that I've taken for a lot of my life and taken it wrong for the many few years that I took it in the beginning until I started to get some education on it. So today I brought the educators to you so that you can get the information that you need up front. So hopefully you avoid, adverse effects, or that you just don't waste your money. Supplementation is a huge business in the world. It's one of the largest businesses in the world. And so there's a lot of folks out there trying to make money, and whether or not that actually aids your wellness or not is based on your diligence to study what's in the stuff that it is that you take. It's not FDA regulated. So you have to really have trust in your working knowledge of the content, and also trust in the folks that are making these things so that you live the longest life you can and you're as well as you can be. So today I brought back Jeff Claver. You guys met him from a first segment. He is the owner of a really amazing chiropractic and progressive rehabilitation center that now myself and all of my loved ones go to. And I have started on a supplement, one of the many that they offer, because I do know about quality products, at least on some level, and was just blown away when I saw the nutritional label of the fish oil that he provided me. And so fish oil is going to be the topic of today. For those of you that are naive to it, you may think, wow, how can they talk for 20 or 25 minutes about fish oil? But when you see the amount of information, the amount of science that goes into this topic, I think it's going to blow your mind. And I hope that this is going to make you want to Mr. Kool-Aid through the wall to your nearest supplement store, hopefully one versus the others based on the quality, and just go get yourself some good quality product to feel the best that you can. So Jeff has brought someone that he works with. I'll let him do the introduction, and then I'm going to let them take the floor and talk to you guys about this information, because they are certainly comparative to me, the subject matter experts for you to listen to. So without further ado, Jeff, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks so much, Tina. I'm excited to be back here, and I'm excited to talk about the results of a test that we're gonna talk to the audience about.
Right.
For you.
That's right.
So hey everyone, Jeff here again with Health Source. We're excited to be back. I also have Matt Kraft here. Matt is my vendor partner from Meyer DC, and he is amazing in the whole supplementation business. He actually, although he's not a doctor, he actually schools doctors. He talks, he knows, he's so knowledgeable. He gets up on stage and actually brings them along as well. So he's a terrific resource. Today we are talking about fish oil, which is kind of a funny topic. Like, really? It's so important. We carry a very limited line of supplementations in our clinic, all designed around making sure your joints get the right nutrients, because if you're not getting joints aren't getting the right nutrients, you're not going to heal as well. So fish oil is probably our most important supplement, because I'm going to let Matt talk about this. But the reason why fish oil is so important is that fish oil is essential in helping your body shut down inflammation. Matt's going to go into more detail, but if you don't have enough omega-3, and if your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is off, your body can't produce a compound called resolvin, which is what it uses to shut down inflammation. So we can do our job as chiropractors and rehab people, but if you can't shut down inflammation, you're never truly going to get out of pain. It might just be like an aspirin. So it's very, very important. And Matt, let me tee that over to you and kind of introduce yourself and give your thought process on why omega-3 is so important.
Thanks, Jeff. My name is Matt Kraft. Hi, nice to meet you. I work with Jeff. I supply Jeff's company with all of their nutritionals.
Hey, Matt.
Not the least of which, in fact, probably, yes.
Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're having a little tech issue on our side. We can't see your face. Can you just make sure your video's on?
Bad timing. I'm sorry. I was getting ready to share my screen. Sorry. I work with Jeff. I supply his company, and I do the training for their franchise in terms of their nutritionals. So it's a fun job. I really enjoy it. And like Jeff mentioned, omega is one of those that most folks are aware of, omega-3 or fish oil or however you've heard it. Most folks are aware of the fact that it's important. A lot of the time we don't know why. A lot of the time we don't the nuance of a really good one versus kind of a really bad one. It is a really important distinction. But if I could, I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and it may kill my camera. I apologize. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Again.
Wunderbar. Okay, so let's get into this. So this map will hopefully give you an idea of, and I realize the legend might be a little bit difficult to see here, so I'll just kind of spell this out. But hopefully this will give you an idea of how bad this really is in terms of the omega-3 deficiency epidemic. So green is good. Think of that. Red is bad. The redder, the worse. So this map paints a rather morbid picture, but the good news is that there are ways to kind of address this and correct it. So you're going to notice a trend here. Right around the Arctic Ocean, there's a lot of green, and that's about the only green you see on the map. There's a little bit here, a little bit down here. Overall, it's almost exclusively focused around the Arctic Circle. Really, really good reason for that. And there's also a really good reason why 9 out of 10 of the high-end, what we would call high-caliber brands that you're going to see out and about, be it in a retail store or a doctor's office or wherever you're going to see it, are going to be coming from that area. In fact, folks that know what to look for will actually seek out supplements that are sourced from this area. And there's a few reasons why. Number one, the waters are clean. So that's pretty easy for most of us to understand. We don't want to get fish that have been contaminated. A lot of us have heard of heavy metals. When you think about it, it does make a lot of sense. People think of tuna as being a relatively healthy source of protein. It is in moderation, but what's the big downside to tuna? It's got a lot of mercury. It's got a lot of heavy metals to it. There's a really, really good reason for that. Tuna are an enormous fish. So it's easy to get a lot of meat out of one fish. It's easy to kind of source that. And so a lot of supplement companies will use tuna to store their omega-3. And really not a great idea in most cases, just because, again, you're going to have a relatively high heavy metal concentration. But also, to get into the second piece of it, the EPA DHA yield per gram is going to be a lot lower. And I'm going to share my screen here. I apologize for the back and forth.
For the lay people here that might be watching that don't know even like an intro to supplements, and I'm sorry for double dutching in, but what would you describe DHA and EPA to be so that people understand what you're referencing?
I'm really glad you double dutched it, because I often leave out very, very important details. As Jeff would tell you, that's part of what I do. I confuse people and then leave out the really important stuff. EPA and DHA are the active components. EPA and DHA are the active components. They're the active ingredients, if you think of it that way. They're the two elements within an omega that are moving the needle. So they're really the only important factors to really concentrate on. Now, everybody and their brother can make, and often do make, 1,000 milligram omega-3. And people think, well, I can go to XYZ store and get the Armageddon bottle of omega-3. It's going to last me for 30 years, $7.99. And it's exactly the same as what I would get from a professional or something like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, you've heard in some cases that taking a bad product is worse than taking nothing at all. Well, with some supplements, that's true. With some supplements, it's not. With omega-3, it's absolutely true. Because what happens is, rather than the cellular membrane, the wall around your cell, is effectively like the gate around a gated community. It's designed to allow people in that are supposed to be there and keep everybody else out. The cellular membrane is exactly like that, except it's a little bit smarter. It's really, really good at detecting good eicosanoids or fatty esters and bad eicosanoids. So what happens is, if the yield for EPA and DHA, and we'll get into this in a second what this means, is below 50%, not only can the cell not absorb that fatty material that's floating around, but then you've just got an innocuous oil that's surrounding the extracellular membrane, the extracellular bath. Every cell has its own little ecosphere, its own little cellular bath, and it's just oxidizing. So it's just kind of chilling out there. The body doesn't really know what to do with it, so it's just oxidizing. Ultimately, that can lead to problems in and of itself.
Yeah, what you're you're basically putting sludge in your body if you're taking a fish oil that has less than 50% combined EPA DHA.
That's a very good way of putting it, Jeff. So let's take a look at what I'm actually talking about here.
And then also, too,
so
just
EPA
to clarify,
and DHA,
Matt, just to clarify, and again, we have a little bit of a lag because of the video, so our viewers will have to forgive us for our back and forth. But if someone has a bottle of it at home and it's got the less than 50%, so we're saying it's a lot of omega-6 to omega-3, so it's not ideal. It's really not what they probably bought it for. Would you recommend that they continue to just finish that bottle, or would it be even better for them just not to take it until they get a better quality at home?
If it's truly what I would call put into the category of not good to take, then no, I would not continue taking it. I would throw it away. You're going to be farther along.
The viewers that can add that EHA and DPA together, and that number is less than half of the total, the recommendation is probably just to discard it.
Right. And can you see my screen?
Yep. Okay. Yep.
Perfect. So for the ease of numbers.
But I do want to just point out that although we are showing our brand there, this is strictly educational purpose, and we're using this because we have a very high quality brand, but it's not about our brand.
Exactly. It's just any brand, how you would differentiate whether it's good quality or not good quality.
Right.
And thank you.
This is not to say you absolutely have to get it from Jif. This is just putting out there a brand, an example of one that we know is good. So for the ease of numbers, let's just pretend for a second that this is 1,000 milligrams. So we're going for a 50% yield. So if this number is 1,000, EPA and DHA together should be at least 500. If it's less than 500, that is the bar in the professional industry. So if it's less than 50%, it's not going to do you any good overall.
What
and the peer review data.
List it, Matt? What if they don't list the level?
Very good question. Sometimes they won't list it at all. Sometimes they'll loop EPA and DHA together. Either of those cases, it's not worth buying. Do not take it. Do not buy it. Those numbers should be itemized. They should be separately listed, and ideally in a 3-to-2 ratio, EPA to DHA. That's what most cases, most of the researchers support.
Right. Like, is it a dose dependent response? So if I see a quality, a 50% quality, and I see a 90% quality, and obviously the 90% is going to be more expensive than the 50, would it behoove me to spend the extra $3 for the 90% to maybe take a larger dose of the cheaper one at 50%?
So you have to keep in mind that 50%, just taking enough to equal the amount of EPA and DHA, you're still going to have those extraneous oils. So you're still going to have those extra oils that are in there that the body really can't use. So it's a numbers game, but it's also a purity percentage yield game. So just taking enough. Now, the peer-reviewed research out there is saying 2,500 to 3,000 EPA and DHA a day are what would be called a therapeutic dose. Jeff was talking about Resolven. That's about the amount that you need to get per day to get the omega-3 index, and we'll get to that in a second. That's that lovely test you took. To get the omega-3 index up to snuff, if you will, up to the level where it can adequately produce Resolven.
And then is there any side effect to taking too much, or is it just loose stool?
There can be side effects for just about anything, and omega-3 is no different than that. And there can be some. And I would, if there's any type of issue or any type of concern about an issue, any type of pre-existing condition, any medication involved, I highly encourage you to seek the opinion of your primary health care practitioner and or a licensed pharmacist. They would be able to give you the final yay or nay on that. There can be, in some cases, viscosity issues. Loose stool can be an issue, but that's more, we'll get into how you're supposed to take omega-3 in a second. If you're taking it properly, in most cases, that shouldn't be an issue. You should take it mid-meal. Ideally, 2 to 3 times a day with your largest meals. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we've all heard about fish burps, or at least most of us have, or fishy repeat, as we call it in the industry. If you have something on your stomach and then something else chasing it down, there's less of an incidence of that. But more importantly, from a biochemical standpoint, we're talking about very, very dense fatty esters that are lipophilic. That means they like other fatty esters to latch on. So there's a delivery faculty as well involved in this. So if you take it mid-meal, it really also does help with the absorption. It maximizes the efficacy. So I hope that answers, because I get that a lot. It's like, okay, this one's a lower yield, but if I take more of it, does it have the same effect? It does not. Right. It's all about being as efficient as possible, because you have to keep in mind another reason why omega-3 is such a big deal and why we're so deficient. Jeff had kind of hinted at it before. We're biologically wired to seek out omega-6 because it's very, very tough to find in our natural environment. And we do, in fact, need it for a number of different biological processes. Unfortunately, our technology has developed a lot faster than our biology has. So we get exactly the wrong kind of omega-6. We got it at exactly the wrong time of day and exactly the wrong amounts. Pretty much, this is where the common sense factor comes in. If it looks like it's a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea. Just because the calorie count might be relatively low or the saturated fat count might be low, if it's fried or if it's got anything like that, and I love fried chicken, don't get me wrong. And we're not talking about completely, but we're talking about beta-coursenoids, specifically something called arachidonic acid, which is a pro-inflammatory eicosanoid. And I'm going to share my screen again. Sorry.
Hey man,
I like this graph.
I want to make sure we get to the test and whatnot.
Yeah, but I also want to double dutch in because I found, so I went through, and this is a quick, just personal piece to this, to have the folks that aren't super sciencey take a mental breather, because these words are super fun for me. I love it. But some of these folks are like, wait a second, photobiomodulation. Hold on, let me just breathe on that. I love it. So, but I took fish oil and I would take it in the morning, empty stomach, with my coffee.
That's when I take mine, by the way.
And then I would burp, and then I would burp up fish with my coffee, and it just ruined my day. I know it sounds silly to say that you just belch oil and it's a bad thing. It's just terrible. It ruins your coffee. It's what you look forward to when you first wake up.
It absolutely does.
So I used to freeze my pills. which is actually a pro tip.
Yeah.
If you freeze your pills, it gets past the sphincter.
Exactly.
So that you don't have to burp it up. But the fact that there's a faculty to consider with respect to how it's absorbed, the fat piece that you're mentioning, I will now take it with my meals. But I guess that's the other piece too. If you're looking to optimize, what I'm hearing from you is that if you're looking to optimize your dollar, but you also need to marry that with the quality that you're getting a product for, then the best way to do that isn't saving the dollar at the store on the sale product that has a lower quality percentage. It's by timing these things right so that you're really optimizing the efficiency of the route of administration and the biodistribution.
What you also want to do is look at the cost, look at the EPA, DHA dosage, and then compare it to the cost of the pill. You often find the higher quality supplements aren't really going to cost you that much more money when you look at what you're actually trying to get to.
Right. Yeah. This is all really great. Okay.
And the freezing of the soft gels, don't stop doing that. That's definitely a good idea. Number one, for the fishy repeat, but number two, it does actually help to get them far down into the small intestine where they're going to do the most. They're going to have the most effect. So that is also something very good.
That's why I always love talking to
Matt.
Matt.
Right. I love this. We're all picking up pro tips. Awesome.
Definitely.
So you have information too about why we use it.
Absolutely. Sure thing. So I'm going to share that here. And just real quick, I always kind of like to, just a 10-second overview here.
Yeah.
We used to address these biomes differently. We used to look at immunity, different from inflammation, different from gut health. And now we're realizing more and more that there's a codependency, not like an unhealthy, like yelling and throwing plates and breaking things type of codependency. This is a good codependency. This is like they got each other's backs. They're in there together. So you see, homeostasis is a good term for that. That means everything's in balance and self-reinforcing. This is where, like, if you've ever been at a point in your life where you feel like your exercises are on point, diet's on point, you can wake up without an alarm, you just feel like everything's good. The idea with that is to get the body there and keep it there, and it's self-reinforcing. Now, what happens when one of these gets out of control is, and it's almost invariably inflammation that happens first, is it's going to knock the other two out of balance as well. So inflammation is always the big hairy monster in the room. It's usually the first thing to creep in. In fact, we, for the longest time, we approached obesity really the wrong way. And then I was attending this seminar. This really, really smart guy got up on stage. He had more letters after his name than I've had good days. And he said, "Who here thinks that obesity precludes inflammation?" And I, like everybody else in the room, raised my hand because there's a bunch of really smart people around me. Some of them wearing lab coats, some of them with pocket protectors. In any event, I was a little out of my depth, but I raised my hand too because number one, I thought it was right. Number two, everybody else is. He goes, "And you're absolutely wrong." And we're all like, "Wow." Blah, 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 blah. You have the rumble in the crowd that you hear about. And it turns out that inflammation almost invariably precludes metabolic disorders in most cases. So kind of fast forwarding, because I know that there is a time issue. I just want to go over this, and this applies to all high-quality omegas. Again, you're seeing the HS one here, but this is the high-quality omega. So the reason why it works for acute inflammation, or one of the major reasons, is what Jeff had mentioned before, resolvin. It's this miraculous little molecule that the body can only produce if it has an adequate amount of omega-3, specifically EPA and DHA. That percentage is 8%. So again, we'll get into the test in a second here. You'll get a visual what that means. Chronic inflammation is more about balancing the 6-3, which we had talked about that a little bit before. We instinctively crave omega-6. And a lot of folks come to me and they say, "Hey, Matt, I found this omega. It's 3, 6, and 9. Is this better?" My gut instinct always is to say no. 3 is the important one. 6 we get rid of all day long. 9 is kind of sort of important, but there's other ways of doing that. 3 is the one we really need to focus on because the omega-6 and 3 eicosanoids compete for the same delivery enzymes to get systematic. So that means that the body is going to have to choose which one it's going to let in. It almost invariably lets the 6 in because it's easier to absorb. It costs the body fewer resources like calories and enzymes and things to absorb the omega-6. The human body's lazy. I hate to break it to you. So the problem is it's going to take the path of least resistance. It's almost always going to take the 6 over the 3. So that's why we need to supplement with omega-3. Cardiovascular, most people are aware of the connection with cardiovascular health, and that's closely linked to cholesterol. Disc degeneration. Now, this one was huge in the chiropractic industry, and most people are going to hear this and they're going to shrug a little bit. But for those of us that have been around the industry, it challenged clinical dogma for a century plus. Because for the longest time, the clinical dogma was you could kind of slow disc degeneration down, but you couldn't stop it. And you sure as heck couldn't reverse it. And this gentleman by the name of Dr. Napier out of Harvard, he's an orthopedic surgeon, demonstrated, and this is peer reviewed. This is not a guy working for a supplement company. This is a researcher from the University of Harvard who publishing peer reviewed research. He was able to not only slow down, he was able to stop and reverse degenerative disc disease in lab mice. The only thing that he did was supplementing with high quality omega-3. That is it. So DHA is the element in there that if you've heard that omega is good for brain health. Aging, cellular aging. There were a couple of studies that were published. Now, I'm a quarter Italian. I'm a sales guy. In case you can't tell, I talk really, really fast. So I'm aging in dog years. So when I see something that tells me that I can age 65% slower at the cellular level, I'm all about it. I'm on top of it. So there were 65% slower at the cellular level. So if you have an adequate omega-3 index, that's that 8% or higher. And then here at the bottom, just kind of calling it.
What are we doing with Botox these days? Yeah. Everyone just needs to be on fish oil.
Hey, Matt, just a
and again, any one of these we could geek out on, you know.
Okay, so then at the bottom there was something important related to comparison, and that's just sort of nailing home the fact that everything is not created equal. And I would encourage people after this segment, man, have it up on your phone with earbuds in and just go to the local pharmacy or the local store and pick out the top 4 large bottles that are right in the front and literally spin them around and look. I was actually at the grocery store like 3 days ago, and I saw a friend's father there, and he's standing in front of the pharmacy at this big table that was in the middle of the grocery store, and it had all the supplements for sale on it by whatever generic brand it is that was there. Big purple top. I mean, every marketing gimmick there'd be to like have you look at this table. And he's standing there looking at supplements. And if you know me, I wheel by on my little electric cart and I'm like, hey, he's like, hey, I go, what are you doing there? And my purposes was to go, you know, and he thought it was a boasting point because he was really excited that he was looking at supplements. And he goes, oh, well, I'd much rather be over at this counter than over at that counter. And he points to the pharmacy. And I'm thinking, people, this is the common conception of people in the community is that like vitamins, if they're vitamins, and supplements, if they're listed as supplements, that they're all okay. And especially when they're on sale, I'm going to buy 16 of them. And it's hard for me as an advocate for wellness to see that happening and not be a thorn in their fun plan. But at the same time, there's such a deficit of education about these quality things. So I'm so grateful for you helping to highlight the fact that all the qualities are not similar and that everything we put into our mouth, I mean, we wouldn't just take a pill bottle off a counter and not really, really research what's in it. You know, people take medications, they can hardly say the generic name of the medication. So you can't even pronounce the medicine that you take. You know nothing about it, but you take it because it comes with the FDA approval. Well, we can get into the whole situation about FDA and all of the, you know, challenges with that organization. But with supplements, for some reason, you'll also just pop. And it's and that's not even, that has no regulation to it. So anyway, thank you for showing us that there's a lot more to it than what we probably think is.
So absolutely, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. EPA DHA potency per gram is definitely the most important factor, but also sourcing. Where is it sourced from? What water specifically? I invariably prefer Arctic source because we had mentioned before the cleanliness of the water, but also you need to look at the types of fish. Are they pelagic fish, the small, deep water fish, the kind that haven't had a chance to accumulate lead, cadmium, PCBs, mercury, all that wonderful stuff. So we're not talking tuna, the enormous ones. We're talking about anchovies, sardines, the real tiny guys. Are they forced to swim upstream in cold water against the current? That's critical, and that's a huge difference maker versus farm-raised fish. If they're not forced to swim upstream against the current like they do during spawning season, they don't produce a hormone in their body that will make the EPA and DHA as bioavailable as it could be. So even though there's a weight of EPA and DHA in there, that doesn't mean that necessarily there's the bioavailability. It doesn't mean the body can use what's there. So that's an important faculty. One more, and then I'll stop rambling for a second here, is the diet. Again, if they're farm raised, they're fed grains, they're fed corn. You don't find corn in the ocean typically, at least last I checked. I kind of hope not. These days I wouldn't doubt it, you know, as everything happening, but typically you don't find corn out there. So they're force-fed a diet that's out of their normal range. So farm-raised fish, which are normally what are used, or worse, fish that are fished out of places that you probably wouldn't want to eat fish out of or take a supplement that's made from there. It's really important to keep in mind the sourcing.
Okay, I'm taking 5 quick take-homes, and then we got to push toward that test, I know. The 5 quick take-homes for people are, make sure DHA to EPA is at least 50%, but the higher the better. Make sure the fish are ideally Arctic, that the fish come from deep water, and that the fish are small rather than big, and that you take it with food, ideally, to improve the distribution. or the absorption?
I've never actually counted how many takeaways there were, so that's good to know. I'm going to use that movie.
Yeah, I think you summarized that
All right,
perfectly.
so 5 main points.
I'm just a dog chasing a car, you know.
So let's transition here because we got something fun to share, and I can't wait to see the results. So there are 10 inflammation markers. Omega-3 and omega-6 is just are two of the most impactful. You can measure your level of omega-3 and your omega-6 to omega-3 balance.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, and if you can control your omega-3, you can really have a much bigger impact on your inflammatory situation than the other ones.
And this is what we're looking at here?
Yep. So this test that you took, we're now going to see live how you're scoring. Most people do not score very well, so don't freak out.
That's okay. So just so everyone knows, I pricked my finger like a little blood sugar check, and I put it on a card at Jeff's office, and he sent it into the lab. And so that's going to tell us basically whether I'm absorbing my omegas or I'm not, right? Or and if I'm optimized to absorb my omegas.
And by the way, you pricked your finger. We did not.
That's correct? Right. Yes, I did.
Disclaimer there for chiropractic.
And I should have done it in the office, but I was just so excited.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of your clients, right? We're going to test them and provide lots of supplements, a reasonable number of supplements, omega-3 supplements.
Well, inflammation and pain are such a profound piece of this transition into disabled life. And it really impacts every aspect of life, including psychosomatic. Like there's a lot of depression related to chronic pain, things hurt, inflammation, and also a lot of uptake of Western pharmacology that leads to a whole host of secondary negative effects that if it can be avoided by taking a holistic supplement, I would much rather see the folks that are beneficiaries of our program do that. And so as a way to objectively analyze it and also to support this idea, because this is brand new to even me that's been in wellness for quite a while, I wanted to try it, start the fish oil supplementation, and then Less Like More Heart is going to sponsor 2 folks with disabilities to do this whole journey as well. Take it at the beginning, whatever we need to do to sponsor them for the omegas, however much is appropriate based on what their level is, and then see it toward the end as well as a way to, again, try to promote community awareness about the importance of this kind of a situation. We're going to also obtain subjective information from those folks as to their pain and their inflammation, discomfort, and their psychosomatic well-being, and just give us more objective information so that the community jumps at the opportunity to improve their wellness.
That's great.
Yeah. So let's see how I rated.
How did you do, Matt?
She did excellent. I mean, in terms of describing it, in terms of the actual test itself, not so good. So let's take a look at this. 8% or higher is what we want to see on this first one. So that magic number, and the body, whenever somebody gives you round numbers, you usually want to be suspicious. But in this case, the body kind of uses round ones. 8+ is good. 12 is probably the highest I've seen. So don't feel bad because most people do score kind of low. You weren't bad. You were by no means were you not the you have not been the worst one I've seen, but you're still in what's called the urgent category. So that means instead of the 4 soft gels daily, you would be taking 6 daily. So ideally you'd want to split it up, probably 3 and 3 with your 2 largest meals. But you see here, we need to get you. This is great because you can literally hold up the mirror. You can say to John Q patient or John Q client, it's like, hey, look, you're supposed to be here. You're right here. This is what we're going to do to get you there. So, and I'm just talking about the health source protocol. That 4 to 6, that's not necessarily applicable to any other one that you're going to find. It's just for the HS.
Though. So I take the test.
Sure.
It tells me a percentage. And then how do you go from that number to the recommendation of dosing, or how does it translate into what is recommended more or less for somebody, just so people understand?
It's a very good question. So it's going to be dependent on the protocol and the practitioner, whatever products they're recommending to you. I highly recommend that you partner with a practitioner with this result and don't just try to find something that kind of fits. It's really important that you get the adequate yields and the adequate products. So in our case, we made it super intuitive for the practitioner. We just pre-configured the dosage chart to correspond directly with the results. So in this case, you would be in the urgent category, so you would take 6 per day. And there are other products that are recommended in addition to that are from HealthSource. I won't get into those right now. But the protocol is very easy to follow. On the patient side, it's very, very simple for the practitioner to monitor your progress. And ideally testing again in 3 months.
3 months.
What's that?
You said the interval for that is 3 months?
3 months.
Okay. And then if I were at 12%, if I were at 12%, would that mean that I have a higher, just so I'm understanding it correctly, I would have a higher omega-3 to 6 ratio in my body? Am I reading that right?
The body, it's an essential omega-3 is an essential fatty acid because the body can't produce it. So what that means is somewhere in your diet, you're getting adequate amounts of omega-3, which is good. We want you to keep doing that. As a backup, it is always recommended, or it's always a good thing to recommend taking an omega-3 on top of that. It's like by the grace of whoever, you've somehow managed it up around this 12% point. We need to keep you there now, is the mentality that I like to take. It's like, yes, you're there. We need to keep you there. So very rarely are you going to find, if you're in this range, you're probably taking steps to be in this range, and you're probably aware of those. Very rarely does that happen by accident.
It's a direct representation of the omega-3 mostly that you have. Is that right? Or
what's that?
So is it specifically measuring, like, is the red to green saying that I have a good or not good level of omega-3, or does this take into effect the ratio of 3 and 6?
That's coming next.
No, that's going to be the next one we're going to look at. This one, and it's a little bit more nuanced than just the amount of omega-3. It's specifically the yield of EPA and DHA found on average in the cells of your body, specifically in the cellular membrane. So there's on average.
Well, wait a second.
What's
Matt.
that?
There's 2 measures to this test. Your total level of omega-3, EPA, DHA, that's one level. That's what we're looking at. Yep. The next one's going to be your ratio of omega-3 to omega-6.
That's right. Okay, that's right. Okay. I'm jumping ahead. Sorry.
Yep, that's okay.
No, that's okay. Okay. So this one is just, it's the omega-3 index. So this is the one that's directly related to resolvin. That's the acute inflammation. You need resolvin in order to heal an injured tissue with minimal fibrotic tissue production. So minimal scar tissue. So if you have an injury, ideally, if you have an ideal level of omega-3, it's going to help support and optimize your recovery to minimize fibrotic tissue buildup as opposed to
here's
healthy
the point
tissue.
I want to reinforce to everyone, just keep it super simple. The reason why this is so important is that if you don't have enough omega-3, you cannot shut down inflammation. It's just that simple. That's why this is probably the most important supplement you can be taking.
That's good to know. I'm really excited we're covering it. So then the ratio, is that depicted on here too?
Yes, this is the ratio that you see here, and I'm trying to minimize any type of anything that you wouldn't want folks to see, but yours was a 5:8 to 1. So we're supposed to be here a 1 to 1. You can kind of get away with a 3 to 1. Most of us are way, way, way over here. It's an absolute. So yours, again, by no means is it the worst one I've ever seen. So you would, again, fall into the urgent category, which makes sense. Typically, it's if you're in one, you're also going to be in the same category for the other measurements. Sometimes you'll get them opposite, like one will come back really good, the other one's really off balance, in which case you proceed with the worst assumption because the protocol is the same. You don't double it up. It's exactly the same protocol. So 3 omega, if you're taking the HS version, it would be 3 omega-3 soft gels twice daily.
And just so that I try to put this all together. So if someone's green, they're usually, you said 4 capsules-ish, right? So the yellow is 6-ish. The red might be more than that, 8 to 10, 12. What is the dosing per?
The max would be 8.
Say that one more time.
The max that we recommend for this protocol is 8 per day.
Okay. And what is it per pill? How much omega-3 is in that one pill?
So in this case, let's take a look. It's a really good question. It's a good opportunity to kind of view what we were talking about before. We're not looking at omega-3. We're looking at EPA and DHA. So we're not looking at 850, but we're looking at 725, which is the sum of the EPA and DHA.
Got it. And we want to get that number to 2,500 to 3,000.
Correct.
Got it. So that's going to be some math, but 5 would be 25 to 3,000 ish. So 5-ish.
Yeah, 4 to 5.
Okay.
4 is what we recommend for daily maintenance.
And that would be the group. So that makes sense with math. Okay. Got it. So basically you're upping per color on the scale. You're kind of upping by 1,400 or 1,500 units of the fish oil.
And I've been through this journey multiple times. I took it early on when I first learned about this, and I scored deficient. Started loading on, I was taking 6 a day. Took it again, and I scored well. And then, like most people, I fell off the wagon, stopped taking it, did not score well. So
did you feel different?
Yeah, I just did not feel as good.
Yeah.
I was overall trying to live a healthy life. So, but I could lose some of this too, and we all can. So I've been on this journey. It's very predictable, and which means it's easy to fix.
Well, I can say anecdotally, and you discussed the points, right? The reasons and indications for being on it. But the reason that fish oil came up on my radar was I had dry eyes years and years ago. And I was one of these kids when they were like 16 years old that was going into the, $20 for unlimited tanning bed sessions and didn't understand the importance of eyewear. And I'm sure that that's where a lot of it came from. And so I saw an eye doctor eventually, and they said, you need to be on fish oil. It helps with lacrimal production, or it helps with dry eyes in some way. And so then I started taking it, and I was taking your corner store, cheap, probably terrible brand. Didn't have a huge change in my symptoms, likely now that we're talking about it because it was a terrible quality. And then I got off of it again. Life happens. It takes you away from those things. And then I got arthritis in one of my joints from gymnastics injuries and lots of surgeries. And the orthopedist said, there's a lot of literature coming out that fish oil really helps with arthritic pain. It helps to lubricate the joints. It helps to maintain the synovial viscosity, et cetera, et cetera. You could speak to the science of that, but that's kind of what he had mentioned to me. And I started taking fish oil, and I got into a quality that was like a liquid one to try to get away from those fish burps. And I was taking about 2,000 a day, which it sounds like I could take more of. But I'll tell you what, within just a few days, my knee felt like it does when I take a Tylenol and ibuprofen. I mean, it was like I could now replace the over-the-counter pharmacology for just the fish oil supplementation. And if I missed it for like a host of days, like say 3, 4, 5 days, my lower back and my knee, the two places that I have these musculoskeletal discomforts, will bark at me. Like it will speak to me within 3 to 4 days.
I've noticed it just over this past weekend. We took a long weekend to do some boating, and I did have a minor injury here on my elbow and my tendons here. And I did not bring my fish oil and other supplements out with me, and it was noticeably more sore. And so now I'm back and loading up on them, and it is less sore.
I know. People have to try it to believe it, because it's like one of those things where anyone could think that we have a secondary gain for trying to talk about it. Of course, they work for a company that sells a wonderful product, and I take that wonderful product, but any wonderful product that you take is what we're trying to say to do. I mean, it's important that you just know what you're taking, trust the people that you're taking it from, get with people like this that understand the true, not just importance, but they have a personal story about why it is that it's important. So you know that they've had their own wellness journey to find through failure the right stuff. And then folks that know the science behind it. Like, so if anyone has questions and wants to learn more information about fish oil in general or supplements in terms of quality, you can reach out to Jeff or Matt. We're going to provide the information and have been along this session below. You had the links there. And, just make sure you're taking the right things. And these are two folks that I have vetted that you can trust to give you information on whether what you're taking is right or not right.
And we're happy to talk with anyone, regardless of whether or not you're a patient of ours. It's something we're passionate about, something I've committed. But I would say what I would leave people with too is the best place to get supplementation is from a professional. And there is a lot of great brands out there, really tremendous brands. Typically, they're going to be sold by healthcare professionals, by nutritionists, by naturopathic doctors. Any professional you're working with is typically going to have better product than what you're going to get any store.
And it's good that you mentioned this as well, because this actually came up for me today, and it's interesting timing. But I used to order my supplements off of Amazon, and I saw a holistic clinician today, and she said, absolutely not. Amazon is filled by so many third-party vendors that you literally have no idea what's in those capsules. Anybody can print a little. So I'm now changing my ways, and I thankfully have recently anyway, but I would just dissuade folks from the convenience factor that we come across when it comes to online shopping and shopping in grocery stores, because we just need to get something quick, vitamin D or fish oil or whatever it was on our list, and it's right here, let me grab it. It's not the way to go.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Anybody else have anything to add before we end our segment? All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Matt. Thank you so much, Jeff. So pleased to share this information with folks, and I'm sure we'll see you guys back.
Well, we're going to do this in 3 months, right?
We are going to do this. Matt, you going to join us? See if I get into the green?
I will. I look forward to that. I hope that I can be on. I will tentatively commit to a 51% probability on that.
I'll track you down, Matt.
Well, until next time, guys,
Absolutely.
best foot forward. See y'all later.